Every time you fill up your car, pay your electricity bill, or buy something that was shipped to you from somewhere else, oil had something to do with that number. You might have seen a headline saying oil hit $80 a barrel, or $100, or $50, and you probably thought, what does that actually mean? And why does a price set on the other side of the planet end up in your wallet? That is exactly what this video is going to explain. Clearly, simply, without skipping the parts that actually matter. What is a barrel of oil? Start with the unit itself. A barrel of oil is 42 gallons. That is it. That is the whole measurement. It is not a physical barrel that gets shipped around anymore. It is just a unit of volume, the same way a mile is a unit of distance. The reason it is 42 gallons specifically is genuinely historical. When the oil industry was getting started in the mid-19th century, producers stored and transported crude oil in whatever barrels they had available, often old wooden barrels that had previously held whiskey or fish. The problem was that not every barrel was the same size. Eventually, the industry agreed on a standard, 42 gallons. The physical barrels mostly disappeared. The measurement stayed. One barrel of oil produces a range of things that most people do not think about together. Gasoline is the biggest share, but the same barrel also produces diesel, jet fuel, heating oil, and the raw materials for plastics, fertilizers, and chemicals. This is why when people talk about the price of oil, they are really talking about the cost of a system that runs through almost every part of modern life. How much oil does the world use? The global figure is roughly 100 million barrels per day. Think about that number for a second. 100 million. Every day. The United States alone accounts for around 20 million barrels per day, which makes it one of the largest consumers of oil on the planet. And here is the part that surprises most people. Despite decades of economic growth and a significantly larger population, American oil consumption has been roughly stable for a long time. Efficiency improvements in vehicles, industry, and buildings have absorbed a lot of what population growth would otherwise demand. But while consumption has been steady, the price has been anything but. Oil prices move dramatically. Major disruptions in global supply, geopolitical conflicts, sudden drops in economic activity, changes in production from major producers can send prices swinging by 50% or more in a short period. The price at your petrol station can change faster than the price of anything else you buy regularly. And the reason for that is in how oil is priced globally. How is the price of oil set? Nobody sits in a room and decides what oil costs. Oil is priced the same way most financial assets are priced, through markets, where buyers and sellers agree on a number based on supply, demand, and what they think is going to happen next. The two most important reference prices are called Brent crude and WTI, West Texas Intermediate. Brent is the global benchmark. WTI is the primary American benchmark. These are the numbers you see on financial news. They are not the price you pay at the pump. They are the price of the raw crude oil before it has been refined into anything. Everything downstream, the fuel, the plastics, the chemicals, is priced relative to these. The trading itself happens on exchanges. Financial contracts change hands constantly. Agreements to buy or sell oil at a specific price at a specific future date. Traders, producers, airlines, shipping companies, investment funds, all of them are in this market. What they collectively agree the future price should be is what becomes the benchmark. But here is where it gets more complicated. The price of crude is only part of what you pay at the pump. Roughly half of the pump price tracks crude oil. The rest comes from refining costs, transportation, taxes, and local regulations. This is why petrol prices can rise even when crude oil prices have not moved, because something else in the chain got more expensive. Why does the US track global oil prices? Here is a question that confuses a lot of people. The United States is one of the largest oil producers in the world. Production has grown dramatically over the past few decades, driven largely by improvements in drilling technology that unlocked oil reserves that were previously too difficult or expensive to reach. So why are American consumers still affected by global oil prices? Why does something happening in a conflict zone thousands of miles away move the price at a local petrol station? The answer is that oil is a global commodity. What that means in practice is that every producer in the world has a choice: sell the oil domestically or sell it on the global market at whatever price the global market is offering. If global prices are higher than domestic prices, oil will move toward wherever the higher price is. This is not a conspiracy. It is just how commodity markets work. There is also a technical dimension. Not all crude oil is the same. Oil varies in weight. Some is light and flows easily, some is heavy and thick, and in sulfur content. Different refineries are built to process different types. The United States produces a lot of one type, but has refineries designed for another. So it makes economic sense to export the type produced here and import the type the refineries are designed for. The result is that the US both imports and exports oil simultaneously, not because of poor planning, but because the economics of the global market make that the most efficient arrangement. The Strait of Hormuz: why one narrow waterway matters to everyone. There is a narrow stretch of water connecting the Persian Gulf to the open ocean. At its narrowest point, it is roughly 30 miles wide. Through this waterway passes approximately a fifth of all the oil consumed globally every single day. It is called the Strait of Hormuz, and it is one of the most consequential pieces of geography on the planet. Most of the oil passing through Hormuz does not go to the United States. It goes primarily to Asia, Japan, South Korea, China, India. So an American watching the news about a conflict near the Persian Gulf might reasonably think, that is far away and not my problem. But that is not how commodity markets work. If a significant portion of global oil supply is threatened or disrupted anywhere, prices rise everywhere, because buyers everywhere are competing for the oil that is still flowing. Think of it this way. Imagine there are 10 sellers of a product at a market. Suddenly, 2 of them are forced to close their stalls. The remaining 8 sellers can now charge more because the buyers who were going to those 2 stalls still need the product, and they are now competing with everyone else for what remains. It does not matter that you personally were not buying from those 2 closed stalls. The competition around you changed, and the price you pay changed with it. That is the Strait of Hormuz dynamic applied to oil. A conflict, a naval blockade, a credible threat of disruption, any of these can move the global oil price within hours because traders are pricing the risk before the disruption even happens. How this all connects to your life. So when you hear oil is at $80 a barrel, here is what that actually means in terms of your daily life. Fuel, the most direct connection. Roughly half of what you pay at the pump tracks the crude oil price. When crude goes up, petrol goes up. When crude drops, petrol usually follows, though often more slowly going down than going up, which is a separate and equally irritating conversation. Everything that gets shipped, almost every physical product you buy was transported using fuel. When fuel costs rise, shipping costs rise, and those costs get passed to the consumer somewhere in the chain. Sometimes visibly, sometimes embedded in a price that just quietly went up without announcement. Heating and electricity. Natural gas and oil are used to heat homes and generate electricity across large parts of the world. Oil price movements ripple through to energy bills, sometimes directly, sometimes through the effect on natural gas prices, which tend to move in a similar direction. Manufactured goods, plastics, fertilizers, chemicals, pharmaceuticals, all of these use oil-derived products as inputs. A sustained rise in oil prices eventually shows up in the cost of things that have nothing obvious to do with petrol stations. The price of oil is not a single number with a single cause. It is the output of a system: global supply and demand, geopolitical risk, refining capacity, currency movements, seasonal demand, and the collective judgment of millions of market participants making bets about the future simultaneously. When that number moves, it moves through the entire economy, not always visibly, not always immediately, but eventually it arrives at the pump, in the supermarket, on the energy bill. Now you know why.